So welcome again, everyone. Today's webinar is titled McMaster Children's Health Center Capital Project Using the Lean Methodology. And we have Dr. Lennox Huang and Colleen Fotheringham Anderson from McMaster to tell us about their experience with McMaster's journey through using the lean using the lean methodology in a capital project. I just wanted, before we get started, I just wanted to, let everyone know, as many of you are starting to become familiar with CAPHC Presents and sort of our webinar program. We do our webinars on pretty much every Wednesday now at 11 o'clock Eastern time. We do still do the patient safety webinars are still, I think it's the fourth Friday of the month. But again, you can always see any of our webinar information under the CAPHC Presents section on the caphc.org website. And we do have a calendar that shows all of the upcoming webinars. We also do, I just want to inform everyone, as most of you know, we do record all of these webinars and we do post them on the Knowledge Exchange Network, which you can find at ken.caphc.org. That's ken.caphc.org. And there's a search box there, there's a tag cloud you can use to find all the information that you need. You can search under webinar to see all of the webinars that we do, or you can search by topic such as lean or whatever else whatever other search terms you'd like to use. Because we do have a fairly large audience today, we will use our usual method of asking questions, which is on your control panel, which is probably on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a little question box. And just to help you find it or give you a chance to test it out, we do have, as I mentioned, we have about 100 people registered, but we know that when people sign in, there's often groups watching. So if you could just type into the question box how many people are watching with you, either type in that you're watching alone or the number that are watching with you, just so we can get a bit better sense of what the size of the actual audience is. All right, we got some numbers coming in. All right. And while we're doing that, I'll introduce our speakers and get the screen passed over to our presenters. Our presenters, as I mentioned, are Dr. Lennox Huang, who is the Chief of Pediatrics at McMaster Children's Hospital, and the Chief of Pediatrics at the Hamilton Health Sciences Center and St. Joseph's Healthcare in Hamilton. You may know Dr. Huang. He has presented for the CAPHC's Patient Safety Collaborative in the past, so the name may sound familiar, and it is in fact the same person. Colleen Fotheringham Anderson is a director at McMaster Children's Hospital in the Autism, Child Advocacy, Child and Youth Mental Health, Eating Disorders, and Developmental Pediatrics and Rehab portfolio. So we're very happy to have these two with us. We've spent some time preparing the presentation before, so I have a little bit of a sneak peek into what they're going to present, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. Any of you, as we know, there's lots of capital projects going on across the country, so I think you're going to find this information and their experience to be invaluable. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Huang and Colleen. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug. Is the screen showing up pretty well?
Yes, I can see your screen, yeah.
Perfect. All right, well, it's our pleasure to be here this morning to talk a little bit about how lean has been incorporated in a variety of capital projects here at McMaster Children's Hospital and the upcoming new build for the Children's Treatment Center. I'm here with Colleen, and again, during the course of this presentation, well, because we have such a large audience, if you do have some questions, please do type them in. We'll try and keep this as informal as a webinar can be and answer on the fly. Doug will receive those questions as we go through our presentation. This is a brief overview of what we're planning to go through this morning. I'd like to just share with you a very quick overview of the range of services here at McMaster Children's Hospital. Talk a little bit about lean principles and lean philosophy. And I'll take you through what we've done with lean and the build of our new pediatric intensive care unit and the pediatric emergency department. Colleen's going to take you through the upcoming new build for the McMaster Children's Health Center and really discuss the lean journey there, which has really been quite an incredible project and is still ongoing. We'll have time for questions at the end, and of course during the course of the presentation, time for questions during that time as well. So we'd like to start off with just a brief sense of who our audience is, and so that way all of you also know who's currently watching. So the very first question is, what is your primary job description? We've got, it looks like 6 options, and I think what Doug, if Doug can chime in, we're going to combine the last one because I think there's only 5 options available for the multiple choice. So frontline clinician, quality specialist, administrator, academic, or parent, family, caregiver, or other.
And if you do fall into that other category, feel free to type in what that other is in the again into the question box, and we'll that'll give us again a better idea of who's out there. So we can see that the answers are coming in. We've got about half of the answers are in so far, and once we get all these answers in, we'll flip it around so we can have a look to see who the audience is. Well, one of the others that has been typed in is an architect. We do have an architect in the audience. So.
Fantastic.
So it looks like most of the responses are in, and we did make this not our usual question. Usually we have a multiple choice question. This is, you can put in the multiple responses. So if you are watching as a group, and I saw from the questions there are numbers, many as 10 people watching in a couple of groups, pick, select all of the people that are watching with you. Just, again, just to give us a sense of who's out there. All right, so we'll flip this poll around. We'll close that off. So the biggest group is the administrators. About half of the audience is the administrators. About 24% are quality specialists, 24% frontline clinicians, 18% are academics, and then 16% are that parent, family, caregiver, or other. And some of the others are the architect that came in, program development specialist, retired social worker, and another other is designer of children's centers, architects / landscape architects.
Well, wonderful. It's great to have such a diverse group with us here this morning. And we think that you're going to, for everybody in each of the groups, you'll find something of value from our presentation. Next question has to do with institutional affiliation. So once again, as with the first question, there's 6 options here, but we're going to combine the last option together. And if there's multiple people, please select all the ones that do apply. Whether you're in tertiary acute care, non-acute care, community hospital, community outpatient, rehab hospital, or you're a parent, family, caregiver, or not affiliated with a particular healthcare institution.
So we do have the responses coming in. Most of the people have entered something. All right, so we'll just flip that around. So the majority of the audience, 60%, almost 60% are from tertiary acute care. The next largest group is the rehab hospital, rehab center, community outpatient group, then community hospital, and then patient family caregivers and tertiary non-acute are only 2% each.
Great. Well, once again, we hope that folks will find something of use, whatever the institution you're affiliated with. The first part of the day, the morning, is focusing a little more on the acute care side, and then the latter part will have a lot more relevance towards the outpatient rehab center side of things. And then finally, what's your lean experience? Are you completely unfamiliar, haven't ever heard of the term? Are you a novice when it comes to lean? Or intermediate or expert. Just as a confession, I still consider myself a novice when it comes to lean. Even though we've done a variety of projects, it feels that as each project unfolds, there's so much more to learn.
I would agree with that. I would put myself as a novice as well. There's always lots to learn. It's an exciting methodology.
If you do have formal green belt training or black belt training or some belt training, in not a martial art, but in Lean or Six Sigma, please do reflect that, though, in your responses.
All right, so I think we have most of the responses are in. So we'll just close that off and share that. So we do have a few experts at 4%. Most of the audience, almost 60%, is novice, followed by almost 30% at intermediate, and 11% are completely unfamiliar, they've stated. And we haven't had anybody type in that they are, in fact, a black belt in Lean.
Well, I hope we didn't bias the answer too much with there a little bit about being a novice. But again, we think that folks will find something of value, whatever the level of your lean experience. So just a quick overview of what's going on here in Hamilton, Ontario at McMaster Children's Hospital. We've got services that are provided actually across two separate geographic campuses. And the acute care side, which comprises of both an inpatient and an outpatient component, is at McMaster University Medical Center. So that's what most people think of when they say McMaster Children's Hospital. But the Children's Hospital actually encompasses a full-blown site which has an incredible volume of outpatient activity at the Shadow campus. You can see from what we have up here, the list of our various acute care beds. It's a full-service tertiary care acute care center at MUMC. And at the Shadow campus, there's a variety of ambulatory services having to do with developmental peds, rehab, autism, child and mental health as well. So what are we talking about when it comes to lean capital projects? So it's not the Leaning Tower piece, nor is it the Narrow House in Boston that you see on the screen's left. Lean really has more to do with this. And you see a car assembly line here. The origins come from the Toyota production system. Taiichi Ono is considered the founder of Lean, and I think it was in the 80s, James Womack, actually it might have been the early 90s, James Womack published a book first coining that term, and now it's really, what we've really seen is an explosion of the use of Lean across a variety of industries. So virtually every single manufacturing, distributing company that's of significant size out there has had some influence from the Toyota production system. And now what we've seen is it's reaching through healthcare in a variety of different ways. Now, if you wanted to summarize what Lean means, I think it really boils down to about 5 words. And this is especially in the setting of healthcare. The first is that people often talk about the customer or customer focus, and in our case that is patient or client. That's really the lens through which everything you do and everything you examine needs to be looked at when it comes to Lean. So when you think of the remaining terms and how you approach things, it's always taken from a patient or a client perspective. The second item is environment, and we're going to expand a little bit on each of these items, and it'll become really obvious how we apply these as we go through the next set of slides. Environment is absolutely crucial. There's various tools for looking at the environment, for considering the environment in which care is given and care is provided, the work that's being done is done in. Process is another fundamental part of Lean. Thinking about all the different steps in which you do a specific activity. And you don't just look at and examine and trying to isolate every single step, but as you do that, you need to think about value and waste. So that's probably the bottom 2 are core principles when it comes to Lean. Value is something that brings a patient or client closer to their ultimate goal. In the healthcare setting, that's maybe getting better from a specific illness, maybe getting a particular diagnosis or test done. And you can look at that in a very big picture sense, or you can look at that in a very small picture sense and be isolated to a single visit in a healthcare facility, or it could be a much larger, broader sense in terms of patient health. And waste is something that we strive to eliminate. So the typical focus in healthcare is oftentimes to tell people to work faster and harder. When you take things from a Lean perspective, what you try and do is isolate things that are not particularly helpful for a patient, not particularly valuable, and try and eliminate or shorten that as much as possible so that patients go through the system as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, and healthcare providers aren't spending their time doing things that aren't of value to the patient or client. When it comes to capital projects, what we like to do is also put on an additional layer of human factors, and this is a classic human factors diagram. what it tells us here is that you need to consider the task, the user, and tool. So if a user may be a healthcare provider, the tool may be IV tubing or a central line kit, the task may be placing a central line. But all of that takes place with a set number of steps, and those set number of steps take place in a specific environment. So you could have the most well-trained nurse or physician providing care, but if they're unfamiliar with their tools, they haven't figured out their processes, and this is taking place in an environment that's not particularly supportive to, for them, then it doesn't matter what level of training or expertise you have, it's not going to go as well as it could.
I think overall we've taken the philosophy that it's about the staff and the patients and how flow supports those activities, as opposed to allowing our capital projects to be defined primarily through the vision of an architect. So our process is that we do deeply engage the frontline staff in making sure that we're articulating our ideal workflows and using that to define how we design our facilities to support those activities.
And so you see this wonderful quote up here detailing a lean approach, which really, to me, speaks about collaboration. You no longer have individual silos where there's an architect, a contractor, the healthcare team, and each one does their own job in isolation, but rather there's a lot of collaboration across the board between all of those individuals to form a team. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done for our pediatric intensive care unit and in the emergency department as well. What we've started off with is a very basic lean tool called a 5S6S tool, and there's Japanese words that for which this originated from. These are the English words that you can see up here. It's widely considered to be a litmus test, so basically a test of readiness to see whether your institution is ready for lean. And one of the very introductory things that we bring forward to try and get people started thinking about environment, thinking about how they can eliminate waste and create value in their environment. I'm not going to read through each of these terms, but as you consider this and look at these terms and talk, you'll notice there's a fair bit about visual cues, a fair bit about cleaning, making a place tidy, looking for safety issues, and that's what we tried as much as possible to do in various aspects of the design and testing phase for both the critical care unit and the emergency department. Another tool that we used is called spaghetti mapping. Some of you may already be familiar with this, some of you may not. What we'll do is I'll show you a quick video to perhaps get you familiarized in the mood for this.
As we work together to improve and transform healthcare, we're reminded that laughter may be the best medicine. In general, the issues are real, but the characters are not.
We can't actually hear the audio for that, Linux. I'm not sure.
Since it is so critical to identify where there are errors and waste, I thought it would be great.
Is that audio coming up now?
Yep, it is now. Yeah.
To map our understanding of patient flow and try to identify areas where we can make improvements. Great. So a patient enters the hospital. Let's say they enter through the ED.
I see them in trauma.
Okay.
Yeah, but only after they've gone through admitting and CT.
Okay, hold on a minute here. We're all assuming that this is trauma. What if it's just a kid who steps on a rusty nail? Okay.
But that presumes that they haven't been able to come into the outpatient facility.
Okay. Whoa. So I see this kid when?
Well, you don't see them
I
until
think so.
it's been admitted.
Where is your roving office first off? All right. Well, then you're supposed to be permanently There are people out in.
Okay. I think I've got it. I think. Does that look right to everyone? Okay. I don't know about you guys, but I am hungry. What do you guys feel like having?
Spaghetti?
So a little bit of a humorous introduction. What we did was apply spaghetti mapping in the pre-construction phase of designing our new pediatric emergency department. So the steps here, oftentimes folks will create a mock-up of various rooms just to get a sense of where things are. Instead of just creating a mock-up and looking at it, we thought, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could actually test the mock-up? So we had a mocked up room based on initial diagrams, initial blueprints of an acute care room for the new pediatric emergency department. And then we placed a high fidelity simulator in there and ran a scenario that we felt would really test the environment quite well. All of this was videoed. We had a mock parent in the room as well, because parents generally accompany their children to emergency departments. And ran a couple of different scenarios and did a bit of spaghetti mapping. Now, this isn't the actual spaghetti map, but you're going to get a sense of how you can use spaghetti mapping in early part of planning out a clinical space. So the first thing that would happen oftentimes is that you have the patient and the parent in the room, and this would be a nurse who came in to speak with the family and have an initial look at the patient, moving around depending on what they needed to access in that room to help with their exam. In this case, I believe it was getting a light from the otoscope ophthalmoscope, which is on the patient's right side of the bed. Then it became clear that the patient was not doing so well. So in came our Broslow cart. You see that color-coded cart symbol at the left side of the screen. And more people came in to help out. So in this case, every single movement and path was traced out in the course of creating a spaghetti diagram. It looked quite a bit messier than what you see here. We had to break open the doors in order to have additional folks in, moving around. And if you notice, what you start to get is a real mess of lines. And when you take a look at this and you take a look at the video that was created from it, you can start to analyze it and say, well, does it make sense to have the various things in the room where they are? So this led to a number of changes. We changed the location of where the parent sat, because initially the parent was actually on the right side of the patient and was in the way for any sort of procedures. Whenever somebody needed to come and get a blood pressure cuff, or get an otoscope, ophthalmoscope, they'd be running into the parent and the parent chair as well. And it certainly was not very helpful in a high acute care situation like a code or an arrest. We moved around some of the services on the head wall as well to make it easier and group them according to the folks that would be accessing it. So things related to oxygen suctioning were grouped together as opposed to spread out initially. We looked at what made sense in terms of where the sink was located, in terms of where the carts and containers in the room were located as well, and led to quite a number of changes. This did eventually culminate in the building, of course, of our pediatric emergency department. We just underwent another simulation lean testing exercise this past Monday. I don't have pictures quite up ready for you to show you yet, but what we did find was that the rooms actually functioned very, very well, even with a major code inside one of these acute care rooms. So, oops. So just to introduce this video. So that was the pre-construction phase for the pediatric emergency department. What we next did was did some testing. So this is in situ testing using simulation, using standardized patients, and then having a team trained in lean to analyze and see where we could eliminate waste, help with processes, and clean up the environment. So this is post-construction, before we brought patients into the actual area in our new pediatric critical care unit.
You give me a second.
and my thanks go out to Scott Lavely for pulling that video together. This was a major effort. We fully staffed the critical care unit for about 6 hours of the day, trained up a number of observers. So the observers were dressed in red shirts for this exercise, but we also trained up the participants and had a facilitated debrief all the way along, focusing on human factors and lean principles to try and get at issues related to process and environment that could be corrected before we had patients move in. Some of these things, one of the key things that we found was we thought there would be a lot of things related to the environment, and that would be unfortunate if there were major things related to the environment, because we'd already built the new unit, which looks spectacular. As it turns out, there were minor things related to environment and a lot more related to process. So understanding how you worked in the environment, what needed to change in terms of what you did on a day-to-day basis, were really the key things that came out. And this also shaped how we oriented new staff to the unit as well and did their education sessions. As you can see, when we underwent this testing, you have a number of individuals. You had bedside nursing staff, you had observers, you had people from a capital team. The person on the right on the far right is a representative from the company that creates these articulating arms. So we had industry in there as well, all working together to try and problem solve and think about how best to utilize the new space. This is an example of what I mean when I say environment versus process. So if you notice, there's a portable x-ray machine in here, and they're trying to take an x-ray of the child who's intubated lying on the bed. Now, if you look right at the top left, the x-ray machine is bumping into the articulating arm. And the first go-round, they had a great deal of difficulty actually getting the x-ray machine up to the proper height in order to take a film. And the instinct would be to say, well, boy, we're going to have to take down these articulating arms, move them all over the place, and rebuild this because we made them too low. Somebody even suggested raising the ceiling of the entire unit. But the reality was this is a simple process issue. All you had to do was move the patient bed over about 1 foot, and this wasn't an issue at all. And the rooms were large enough that it was very easy to do that. So that's a very basic process issue that was discovered by doing this testing, and then having people think about process and environment.
Lennox, could we get you to speak a little bit louder or a little bit closer to the microphone? Your volume's gone down just a little bit here.
Sure, no problem. Again, another picture of the ICU environment. So we brought in all the possible equipment that might need to function in that space, just to get a sense of how people would move around the patients and the beds as well. The rooms looked gigantic before we moved all the equipment in there. Once you moved equipment in there, it rapidly became smaller and smaller. We took plenty of video and did some preliminary spaghetti mapping as well to track the flow of people in and out of the actual environment. And we've also put on pedometers to each of the staff to see how much they actually traveled as they went around through the ICU. Don't have full results back from that yet, but preliminary results would suggest that there were some individuals who traveled an awful lot because the space had essentially quadrupled in size. A basic environment issue, when we had services from outside of the pediatric critical care unit come up, they couldn't find the rooms. And as you see on the left, the initial lettering was done in basically a transparent orange plaque. The simple solution was to make that black so it was much more readily visible. Another environmental safety issue that came up as well is that the code buttons were not visible on these arms. And so a simple solution, and this came about through some of the 5S, 6S exercises, and thinking about it in that manner, was to put a basket right next to the code button. And then the cord, which would be the call button, would just sit there, and you could then see quite clearly where to pull the code if you needed to. This is a quick video that illustrates another issue, one of the 5S, 6S facets of lean, which is safety. looks like that the embedded video is not coming up. Let's try that again. Well, I'll talk you through the picture. What you see around this table is a patient who's currently intubated on a ventilator. They're needing to do a variety of things right at the head of the bed. So you see one person here at the head of the bed. This is the patient's bedside nurse, charge nurse over here, ICU fellow over here. And if you notice, we have these articulating arms that have two components, one smaller here and one larger here. The unit before we moved into the new unit did not have these articulating arms, and we thought, boy, this is fantastic. What we're going to do is put every single gadget and basket on here possible. So if you notice, there's all sorts of IV poles sticking out, baskets sticking out every single way. And what happened over the course of our testing is that more than one individual bumped their heads on these baskets because there simply were too many. It got too cluttered, and there wasn't a real reason to have the baskets there. It ended up being a source of waste, which then translated into a safety issue. The bedside nurse here, unfortunately, in the video, which you would have been able to see, was leaning down to pick up something, bumped her head right on this particular basket here. There were other people that got bits of clothing caught on various hooks that were sticking out. So sometimes having more is not necessarily a better thing, and lean, really, that's something that's encapsulated by lean philosophy, is trying to do less and do it a little bit more efficiently. So now I'm going
to try and up your volume just a bit more. I'm not sure if that ambient noise reduction setting on your microphone has maybe automatically adjusted your mic volume down. I'm not sure, but you're still just a little bit too quiet.
A little bit faint. So I'm going to turn this over to Colleen. Perhaps she'll speak a little bit louder, and that won't be an issue.
Thanks, Lennox. I'm really excited to talk to you today about the planning that we're doing for the McMaster Children's Health Center. This is a brand new facility that we are in the very early stages of planning for. We're not nearly as far down the road as what you see in the earlier pictures, but what we will do, or what I will do, is tell you a bit about where we have come from and how lean is helping us to inform what will be the design for this new facility. So just a bit of background about the McMaster Children's Health Center. There are 4 programs that will be relocating to this facility: the Autism Spectrum Disorders Service, Child and Youth Mental Health Program, outpatient services, Developmental, Pediatrics, and Rehabilitation, and we will also be incorporating the Prosthetics and Orthotics Services. In the end, when we move into this new facility, we're expecting visits to total about 70,000 per year, and there will be over 300 staff in this new facility. Where we came from is that the funding for most of these services is from the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, not Ministry of Health. That funding tends to be mostly dedicated, and what that has done is developed a number of programs and services that are particularly structured or siloed. What that means in a lean thinking is that we decrease our value and increase waste, and we increase waste in a system like that because we have multiple processes that are duplicated throughout the numerous service elements. We currently are operating these services out of multiple buildings, and none of them are designed for current functions, let alone care of children. In fact, the buildings were originally constructed in 1906, and it was a sanatorium for patients suffering from tuberculosis. We also have many of our programs that have remained relatively unchanged for more than 25 years in terms of both staffing and models of care. And while that's a great thing in some respects, it's also challenging in others. Back in 2003, we wrote our first functional program. That plan was, we moved forward with that planning mainly because the state of the facilities that we're currently in was becoming quite concerning in terms of our ability to maintain and to be able to safely deliver services. That first functional program reflected the desire to consolidate the services that McMaster Children's Hospitals has at the Shadok site, as well as building in the Prosthetics and Orthotics Service into one purpose-built about information on prosthetics and orthotics. It's really operated out of our Rehabilitation, Complex Continuing Care and Seniors Health program of Hamilton Health Sciences. And this is a program that provides consultation and assessment, manufacturing, fitting, and modifications and finishes of devices and wheelchair seating aids for clients from birth to the elderly. So there is a very strong and important relationship between what P&O does and our children's developmental rehab program. In 2008, at the request of the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, we were asked to update our functional program. However, we were challenged in that we had basically 8 weeks in which to do this, which resulted in essentially a plan to replicate the current structures in the new facility. And by that I mean it supported the space that was identified, really supported the programs operating in silos much as they do now. So in other words, it more or less entrenched a lot of the waste that is currently in the system. We were really pleased that in 2011 we received an announcement that our new building would be supported by the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. That really was the point at which we knew we had an opportunity through a burning platform that improve our current processes and to ensure that we're going to build a facility that will best support the work that we do and the staff as they're doing it. We started to implement a process that began with a full review of our current services and start to look at how do we plan for the future services in this facility. We had another opportunity to update our functional program yet again in January of 2012, and that is mainly because our autism services were significantly increased. So we had the opportunity to update that as well. In March of 2012, we announced the site for this new facility. It is going to be located down in Hamilton, the Hamilton Center. And that was driven primarily because of a series of work done through our local newspaper, the Hamilton Spectator, that identified areas and neighborhoods within Hamilton based on their health and socioeconomic status. The Hamilton Center was identified as the area in the city with the highest poverty, the highest percentage of low birth weight babies, and an age of death nearly 10 years earlier than the city average.
And you know, you can see with this that the very first item when we talk about lean is patient focus or client focus, and this is, I think, one of the very fundamental things about this project that ties back into lean. We start right off from the bat in terms of where it's located. It needs to be taken into account from a patient or client perspective, and this made the most sense.
We started to develop the project planning processes and structures through site visits, and you know, that's about you don't know what you don't know. And we also had a wide consultation with others who have experienced capital projects and renovations, did an extensive literature review, and have done extensive education and training in lean. We developed our planning structure requirements that included a strong mandate for principle-based decisions, ultimately using lean methodology in our decision making, to develop things that are planned for future-oriented, and of course, and above all, patient and family focused. We wanted our projects to be have clear deliverables and timelines. Engagement of stakeholders is fundamental to all of our processes. Sharing of information and transparency of how we are moving these processes forward, and reporting. So this is our current structure. We have a steering committee, an operations committee. The operations committee is comprised primarily of the leads of 14 working groups. We have approximately 110 people actively and directly involved in these working groups and committees. And we are also in the process of establishing a youth advisory council with youth representatives from each of the programs and the acute side of McMaster Children's Hospital, which we will be using as consultants throughout the design of the building. One of the benefits of that particular stakeholder input is that we have identified space within this facility for a teen lounge. and that was directly as a result of the input from this teen council, where they informed us that we're really good with designing space for kids, and we're really good about designing space for adults, but we are not good at thinking about the teenagers and adolescent population. So our structure is, as I said, there were 14 working groups. Those 14 working groups were split out into a number of areas, 4 program working groups, one representing each of the programs moving into the facility. We have 3 project process working groups: change and transition, project communication, and stakeholder engagement. The change and transition working group is really work that's being done to support our staff in making the change, both in terms of the way we're changing our processes for lean, as well as the change into the new facility. It's also going to be focused on supporting our patients and families as we move into this new facility. Our project communication working group is really developed to oversee high-level communications for the project, for the life of the project. And our stakeholder engagement, which I will actually describe in more detail later, is really developed to make sure that we have broad stakeholder input. So we really want to make sure that the users of the facility, the patients and the families that are accessing our services, as well as our staff, have every opportunity to be part of this process. We have 5 element-specific working groups. Centralized registration, so we're moving from multiple registration processes to one for the entire facility, and moving from paper-based scheduling to electronic. That's a direct result of using lean principles to look at where is the waste and where are we going to be able to provide the most value to our patients and family as they come in. Electronic health records, we are going to be moving to electronic documentation. In fact, we will not be building space in this facility for centralized paper charts. We are looking at coordination of resources and space for physician activity within the facility, and we also hope that by using lean and looking at our processes for that area, we will have the opportunity to offer additional clinics that would support the patients and families of our center. The technology opportunities and resources, it's a facility-wide assessment of technology as a means of supporting the processes. So when we set this up, our goal was actually to have a low-tech building. We want the processes to be clean and lean, and elimination of waste, and you then use technology to support that. We have 2 facility-wide processes. Our facility management, which is really looking at, how are we going to address the activity of the entire facility, and the value-added features and opportunities. So that is really ideas and options for bringing the community in. As an example, cooking classes in our ADL kitchen for the community. So again, it's how can we use this new facility as a means of supporting the neighborhood in which we're going to be housed. Going back to the stakeholder engagement, we're really, really excited about this particular element and how successful we feel we've been to date on this. We made it a fundamental principle that all working groups would include frontline staff, cross-program, and patient and family representatives. And I'm really, really glad to say that we have five families that are actively engaged in multiple meetings, as well as our youth council, and a number of other families that come in and advise on various elements as we're working through the planning process. We have had suggestion boxes placed throughout the current buildings and in the programs. We have had that from the minute we knew that we were going to be getting this building, to ensure that everyone had ample opportunity to provide their comments and questions. We've also started a survey. The name of the survey is Estimating the Value of Design Features to Staff, Families, and Stakeholders, and it's a evidence-based process and survey that's being conducted by Dr. Charles Cunningham and Dr. Allison Nichols. Both of them are psychologists within the Children's Hospital. Dr. Cunningham is the Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neurosciences and the Jack Laidlaw Chair in Patient-Centered Health. And Allison Nichols is an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioral neurosciences and the clinical director of the McMaster Children's Hospital Infant Parent Program. The intent of this, or the structure of this survey, is to rate individual design features, and it's using a discrete choice conjoint survey. So why complex choice methods? And I will tell you I am not the expert in this, so bear with me as I try to explain this fairly sophisticated method of survey. The technique is based on the premise that a product or service can be described by its attributes or its characteristics, and that the extent to which an individual values a service depends on the level of these characteristics. So the technique is used to approximate the complexity of the real world, to understand the value of attributes in the context of others, to get feedback on service design trade-offs, to simulate responses to hypothetical design options. And this is an example of the one of the questions in the survey. So it basically asks the question, or gives people the opportunity to look at 3 hospitals where services might be provided to children, youth, and families. And it's asking you to then select which hospital you would prefer. So if Hospital 1 had check-in by smartphone and no family resource center, Hospital 2 would provide check-in at a computer kiosk and would have a family resource center library with internet and librarian help. And Hospital 3 has check-in with reception staff, but a self-guided family resource library. And as you go through, these are the types of questions that force choices and helps to identify exactly what the preferences would be when having to make real choices in a simulated real-world environment. So to date, we've had 363 participants, 281 staff, 56 parents, and 26 of our community stakeholders. I will tell you that these are the numbers to the end of December. What we're doing throughout the month of January is we've identified our dedicated staff who will go to as many of the clinics as possible to try to sit down to get as much parent and patient input as we possibly can throughout the month of January. What we've done here is we've collected through the suggestion boxes 13 attributes that were very common, or the most common areas of interest or concern or expectations that came out of the suggestion boxes, and used those building design attributes to form the basis for this survey. So really what you'll see is that private versus shared treatment spaces, parking costs, check-in process, family resource library, refreshments, outdoor playground, waiting room notifications, signs of wayfinding, security, TV programming and waiting areas, child binding, building theme, and atmosphere of the building were the 13 design attributes that were the most commonly came up in through our suggestion boxes. So as a result of the surveys to date, you'll see that the private versus shared treatment spaces came out as having the most relative importance of all of those 13 important design building attributes, and atmosphere of the building being the lowest relative importance of the 13. When we look at things like waiting room notification, the information can be broken out by group. So, for instance, parents have indicated that they prefer a receptionist to either text messages, pagers, TV screen, in terms of notifying them when they're ready to be seen in their for their appointment. So we are utilizing the results. We're in the process of analyzing the results of this survey, but we have used these to inform how we design the building. And we will also be using it, most importantly, to make sure that our processes support the preferences and the importance of the preferences that have been defined so far. The other work that we've done is we've gone to many site visits. We've actually conducted 18 throughout Ontario and Northwest United States, where we have had some really key learnings. one of the common themes is the attention to detail, and you cannot, and as exampled by Lennox's comments earlier, you cannot pay enough attention to the detail, and the smallest detail can make some of the biggest difference. Know and celebrate who you are, always build beyond standard, be conscious of safety in all cases, multi-purpose, and embrace lean. So where we've started in this process for lean is we started out by going to the American Family Children's Hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a relatively new facility, and I would really encourage anyone who has the opportunity to visit. It's pretty spectacular. There, the attention to detail was evident in every element of that facility, the people who work there, and the processes by which they provided care for the children and youth that came to there. Their staff are very highly engaged, and they very much focused on lean and referenced us back to Seattle Children's Hospital, who are also leaders in lean design and lean processes within a children's hospital. We have invested in Greenbelt certification for project leads, and we're very fortunate to be able to designate an individual, Randy Robichaud, as our clinical project lead, and she has undergone Greenbelt certification training. We are proceeding with additional training and other staff as well. We have brought in a company who actually, Easy Sigma, who actually did some pretty significant training for our entire operation team. We've continued our lean training by using in-house quality specialists. We also have invested a fair amount in books, articles, and videos, which we provide through our SharePoint access to anyone who would like to access them. This is just a picture of our first lean training. You can see there's a significant number of individuals there that included frontline staff, physicians, program leadership, as well as representatives of families. We had human resources, decision support, public relations, and finance. Again, trying to be all-encompassing in our training, so that as we move to implement more and more of the lean methodology, we have the broadest group that are familiar with it and supportive of it. Our approach has been to identify specific lean tools that are expected to be completed by each of the working groups as we started this process. Each of the working groups were asked to develop project charters, to identify project work plans, to work on critical twos, and this is a lean tool that's used to describe the outputs that are critical to quality, to cost, to delivery, and to health, safety, and regulatory obligations, and all of that with the view of critical elements that are important to our families and patients. We have done, each of our groups have done a change readiness assessment, which is used to get a better understanding of the staff's readiness for change, and again, a stakeholder analysis. So as each of the working groups proceed with their activities, they want to use these tools as a means to understand the impact on what they're doing for their particular stakeholders. Each of our working groups have also completed SIPOCs, which are high-level analysis of suppliers, inputs, outputs, and customers associated with each step of the high-level processes within their scope. They have all done value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is really a sequence of activities that are required to design, produce, and provide a specific good or service, along with which information, materials, and work flows with that. It's very high level, and it is done with the focus of what's the best value for the client or the patient. Each group has done process maps and continues to do process maps. Really, that is where you take a specific process and map out the various steps. It's a means to identify hidden factories, which are workarounds in a process. It helps you define where the waste is in a process. It's been very useful in our thinking about how we want this building to be designed. spaghetti diagrams, as Lennox has already talked to you about. They've all done a failure mode and effects analysis, which is a tool used to identify where steps in a process may fail. And then 5S events in each program. This is now a quarterly event where an area within a program is undergoing a 5S event. What I can tell you is that through doing this, particularly the 5S events, we have decreased the space for storage in our new facility by 50% from what we have now. Again, this picture is a bit blurry. It's coming out a bit blurry, but it really is showing you how what we've done is when we have a group, in this case developmental pediatrics, have gone through a value stream mapping exercise. We brought in our quality specialist to help walk us through that, but we also brought in our entire operations team and all of the working group leads to learn from that event. So we've tried to make our learning practical and spread it as far as we can as we move forward. So where did we come from, and what have we learned, and how has Lean improved what we're doing? When we first started and we first started delivering the education around Lean, we had some groups who actually wondered if they even had processes supporting some of their activities. We have also had multiple groups who have come to this understanding that they have similar processes for the same thing, and most of them have many hidden factories, so many workarounds to get through process challenges. As I said already, we've reduced our space we need for storage by 50%, and we've also learned that we can actually share space throughout our new facility. Thus, what we will be doing is making sure we're using rooms optimally. We're not going to be having group rooms, for instance, sit empty for mornings every morning when we could be using them for treatment space. This was something that came from one of the working groups, which I actually thought was really good, and it talked about how they're starting to use Lean principles for problem solving. So in this case, they used it as 100 staff and 2 washrooms, but understanding it's a process issue and it's also bookable space. So we are really at the very early stages of our design and our Lean processes. Our next step is really to turn some of our working groups into project teams and to operationalize our new processes. So for instance, centralized registration, which we will start to roll out within the next 12 to 14 months. In terms of the facility itself, we hope that construction will begin in 2014, and we'll be moving into a new, brand new building in 2016 with all of our processes cleaned up and waste eliminated.
So I hope you've got a sense from our presentation of a couple of different things. The first part, we focused on the acute care areas, and you can see a little bit about how Lean can shape the design of new clinical areas, or perhaps even existing ones. We've actually worked with Seattle Children's Hospital on redesigning existing emergency department rooms using simulation and the 5S, 6S exercise and approach. Then if you take it from there, you can also see how if you've designed a space with Lean in mind from the start, that can actually affect the clinical processes that take place in that shape, in that space. And really, you know, it's, as Colleen was saying, it's a burning platform. It's an opportunity for you to redesign services that may need redesigning, redesign processes that are taking place for a much more efficient, patient or client-centered approach, one in a space that is safe and efficient. We're happy to take any questions. I don't know if some questions have popped up during the course of our presentation. We didn't have any interruptions then, but we do have plenty of time for questions now.
Yeah, we do have a few questions that have come in. And just again, a reminder for anyone who does have a question, just type it into the question box that I believe is usually on the right-hand side of your screen. The first question that came in was for Colleen during her section of the presentation. She said, what are the demographic findings for the parents who responded to the surveys?
We didn't actually ask that information, but they are parents who are coming from all 4 of the programs. So patients that or families that are part of all 4 of the programs have responded.
All right, thanks. The next question starts with a comment. It says, lean sounds ideal. Then she goes on to say, it speaks to efficiency. However, the other part of the equation is effectiveness. This can be highly influenced by staff having the right approach / attitude. Where does that fit in with lean?
Maybe I'll start off with the first part. So lean does, in a lot of ways, sound ideal, and we don't want to say that this is a panacea. It's not something that's going to solve all of your problems. I think it's one of a set of tools and approaches that's migrated over from the manufacturing world into healthcare to help improve efficiency and help really, I guess, focus healthcare on doing more with a little bit less, and not by simply working harder. There's a couple of exercises when I teach lean, and I teach the fairly introductory basic concepts of lean. There's a couple of exercises that we'll take groups through to show them how, by doing a little bit less but doing it more efficiently, you can actually flow patients through faster with fewer errors. The other part, one of the core things that we teach when we teach about lean is it's a philosophy where everybody, so all the staff, need to understand what the goals are and what the ultimate goals are. And that's part of what happens with lean training. It's actually very helpful for some groups, and Colleen could probably speak to this a bit more as well. When you get groups of people into the room and you start discussing these things, you start saying, well, this is a lean approach. What are we all here for? Why are we doing these things? What's the ultimate goal here? It's not to just come in and stamp a piece of paper, do a test, fill out a form. We're doing this because of our patients or our clients. And you set these ultimate goals in there, and you can really mobilize a team towards that common goal. It's something that's fairly powerful in lean. Colleen, if you want to ask a bit more, you've done a lot more of the team training aspects of this.
I think that, in terms of staff engagement and support, I can't tell you how impressed I am with the teams that we've got and all of the staff participation and support for the activities that we have undertaken. I think it's striking, and I think it's been striking to everybody who's been part of this, that once you learn, it's one thing to learn about the methodology, but it's another to actually sit down and start to see how it's going to impact or benefit you in what you do every day. So I have heard I've had a lot of feedback from frontline staff who have been part of some of these working groups. When they start to work through the processes and start to see just how much extra work they do to make things happen, they really buy into the idea that we really can do this better. And it isn't about working harder, and it's not about working more, but it is about how do we work in a way that's going to really support what we're trying to achieve.
And when you take it to capital projects, one of the great benefits here of engaging the whole team and involving them in a lean design process is that ultimately this is their clinical area that they've built. So they can see, however minor it is, they can see that the feedback, the work that they put into it with the training that comes with some of the lean training has had a very direct and visible impact on the environment. So something as minor as changing the room numbers, it's there now every single day to remind them that yes, their feedback was important, they participated in it, the training they received in it helped to shape the environment that they're currently working in.
Comment to the previous question about the demographics of the people that were answering the survey, and it's from the person who asked the question. She's just suggesting that you should be asking for SES levels, socioeconomic status levels, etc., if you're planning on situating the building within a high poverty area. Parents who typically access healthcare for their children are from high levels of socioeconomic status and already have high abundance of social networking skills, a fairly important question that Lean might incorporate. She's just suggesting that's something you might think about going forward.
Oh, I think it's a really good point, and it's one that, you know, we recognize needs to be looked at, and we'll be focusing some efforts over the next while in how we might address some of those.
The next question that came in was from Lynn. She's asking, were you able to eliminate the hospital card, and if so, how?
The hospital card? Sorry, could you just repeat that?
And Lynn, if you can provide some more details as specifically what you're asking. The question was just, were you able to eliminate the hospital card?
Would that be like a BRADMA?
I think that's what she means.
Probably, I'll let you.
I don't think that wasn't a specific focus for our project. I believe we've actually transitioned that to being electronic across the institution. But that wasn't a particular focus of this. I think it happened independently of what we were doing.
Yeah, she was referring to a card that you use to stamp documents and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's all done electronically now across the institution. There may be some areas that still have remnants of that, but we've transitioned to that being electronic, and that was independent of our lean work.
All right. The next question the person's asking, is there more information available about the research that was conducted by the doctors Cunningham and Nichols that you referenced earlier on?
There will be. They are in the process of finalizing the results. The survey is still live, as I had indicated. We're trying to really get some more focused family and patient input until the end of this month, and in which time they will be doing a thorough analysis of the data, and we hope to see that published, or at least written up to be published. But I would be, if anybody would like to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to link you in with them, and I'm sure that either one of them would be happy to talk to anybody in depth about this particular analysis.
I know Chuck Cunningham's done a great deal of work around the forced choices methodology, so I think if you probably did a PubMed search on him, you come up with a variety of different publications where he's used this in other settings.
All right. In the survey about value of design features, were answers from parents and family different from the answers from the staff?
Yes, and some of the attributes they were in a surprising number. They were relatively close. Now again, you know, we didn't have the number of families responding that we would like, and that may change after we get those final results from the activity this month.
I think one of the things that struck me when Colleen was telling me about this first was how folks would like to be notified in the waiting room, because we hear about this. If you go to any administrative conference, you hear about people giving out the little pagers like they do in restaurants with that would go off, and that way parents and families can walk around through the institution, spend money at the gift shop, or go and have a bite to eat in the cafeteria while they wait for 3 hours for their particular appointment. And you know, perhaps this really underlies something that we were missing at the first part, which is that, well, first off, people don't like to wait. That's a key element of waste, and people, when it comes down to it, we're all humans and we like human contact. So that it was great to see that that ultimately families like to hear from a receptionist or business clerk as opposed to a text message on a phone. And some of this, again, also, the comment earlier about socioeconomic class, it really does ring true. It is important because certainly some of the families that we're dealing with wouldn't have a smartphone, wouldn't have a cell phone to receive SMS messages.
All right, so we have one more question, and then Elaine Orbine, CAPHC's president and CEO, is in the office with me here. She's got a comment to make. But the last question we had was, in your opinion, which tool used in your lean sessions gives the best results in terms of staff adhesion or engagement?
Oh, that's a tough one. Maybe we'll both answer, Colleen.
I think from where we are and what we're doing, the process mapping was by far the best tool. I think that's really where the aha moments came from the staff, and I think having representatives from every step of that process in the room when doing it really helped each other understand what work was being done by, for instance, the business clerk and the therapist, having a better understanding of what the other is doing and the impacts of that process on their work. So I think all of the tools and the training were foundational to were foundational for the process mapping to be successful. But I think in the end, the cohesion and the aha moments really came with that process mapping piece.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and answer with two answers. I think the very first one, I'd agree with Colleen around the process mapping, because what it does is it brings teams together and gives everybody a voice. Everybody likes to tell other people about what they do in a particular process. So if you're running a clinic, how many times in a day does somebody get to say, well, look, you're actually important. What do you do, and what are the aspects of your job? And when you process map and you bring a team together, it gives a voice to every single member of that team, and that's absolutely crucial for team cohesion. Now, the reality is that it's very difficult to be able to do this for every single team across an institution, and you just might not have either the resources, time, whatever it is to be able to do that. In those cases, I find for something that's you want a quick and easy win, and you don't have the time to take every single member in, things like a 5S, 6S exercise can be very valuable, because again, it goes back to visual changes that are sustained over time, and it cleans up an environment. People in general, folks are happier working in a clean, efficient, well-organized environment. So that would be the quick, easy one, but without a doubt for cohesion, I'd agree with Colleen around process.
I would just add around the 5S processes, we tried to make them add a bit of humor into them and ask the teams to actually come forward with some of the best treasures that they uncovered in some of their 5S processes, and it's been quite a humorous adventure to see that some of the things that are still in packages that were used in 1970 are still being stored.
Colleen, I'm not surprised to hear that about things back to 1970. My office is like that. It's funny, my question was exactly that that you've just answered, so I certainly won't repeat that. But along the same lines, Lennox and Colleen, what were some of the challenges and then the learnings around engaging with community stakeholders, with youth? Did you have to apply, different strategies, approach it a little bit differently to really garner that true engagement and ownership, if you will?
In terms of the community and family engagement, I think it was very helpful that we brought them in from day one. So, we actively sought them out and offered them the training right alongside us, so that they had that understanding of what we were trying to achieve. We continually reach out. We will make special arrangements to meet with them, bring them information. We're really working very hard to make sure that we have that input. In terms of youth, we've used the same approach. While it's difficult to schedule these meetings at a time when adolescents can be available and not impact their school, what we're doing is meeting with them in the afternoons. We're going to offer a dinner or pizza party or something to bring them in, and so our commitment is that we will periodically bring them together, and we'll put on the table all of the various issues and challenges that we're dealing with, and hopefully get their input that way. And what we're finding is that their parents are also quite intrigued with this and are wanting to be participants as well. So we're also getting additional family support through that.
Excellent. Thank you.
We did have a couple other questions come in at the last minute here, so I'll just get through those. And just one more reminder, if you do have a question, time is running out, so get it into the queue. The next question is, did the Ministry of Child and Youth Services not appreciate how efficient it was to request an updated functional program within 8 weeks back in 2008? And did they buy into the lean approach?
I'll answer the second first, and that is that they are really pleased with the approach we've taken. We understand that they want to model our approach to the design of this facility for any future capital projects that they are rolling out. So we're really pleased with that, and look forward to working with them in that way. In terms of the 8 weeks, you know, I suspect it was much more around financial drivers than really timelines or understanding the need to sort of spread that out a bit. I think it was really about when funding was available.
All right. The next question is, was ongoing operation cost a factor to consider when a new design idea was generated during the lean session, and how did you deal with that? Sorry, the grammar was a little off there. I'm not sure if that made sense when I asked it, but
perhaps what I can say is address the issue of costs in terms of new ideas generated for a lean design or a lean approach, and we had to be realistic. So even when it came to the pre-design phase, or during the post-build testing phase, we were pretty explicit from the outset. We said, look, you can't go around knocking down walls. We have to be responsible. There's been a great deal of money spent in creating a new build as it is. What we're looking for are fixes that make sense, that are within a reasonable budget. So, you know, when the issue came around to articulating arms or lines of sight, there were individuals who said, well, why don't we just raise the ceilings, or why don't we knock down walls? And you know, sure, if you had unlimited budgets, you could do all of these things in an unlimited amount of time. But the reality is that I think that's probably not in the best interest of keeping a cost of healthcare down across the board. So we did coach the teams through that. And what we did find is the reality was that most of the lean suggestions that came up were minor environmental changes and major process changes that, if anything, were either cost neutral or ended up saving money. And I'm not sure if that, in some of the discussions that have come up on Colleen's end, in similar vein around new approaches to design.
Well, I think we're fortunate because we're at the stage of designing a new facility, and so you know, we're not having those same challenges of having to make choices with what we're going to do to fix a current space. I think that as we've gone through this learning, and more of our frontline staff and leadership have partnered in adopting lean as a way to relook at our processes, I think people are seeing that it is an opportunity to find some operational savings, and we've been pretty clear that as long as we manage within our budget, that you know, there may be opportunities to reinvest that we wouldn't otherwise have. So we're pretty much at the early stages of this, but that would be the approach that we've taken for our new facility.
all right. A couple more questions did come in. The next one is sort of a two-parter. It says the first part is approximately how much in dollars has Montreal McMaster Children's Hospital invested in lean over the past few years? And the second part is, how do you account for backfilling costs when employees on clinical sides are participating?
Well, I can speak. It'd be pretty tough for us to get a total quantification in terms of the cost of lean. Certainly, all the training that I do internally with Lean is free. So I had the opportunity to have green belt training a number of years back in Lean Six Sigma, and have taken that and trained subgroups of individuals on basic Lean principles. That's all been free. So it hasn't really cost a whole lot at all. When it came to the specifics around the testing and design for the emergency department and the critical care unit, it did cost money to have staff away for full days. But the way we looked at this was a relatively minor cost for something in order to get a clinical space right from the start before moving into it. Other institutions I know have put even more money and time towards this, and they've retained outside experts. I think it's a whole lot more efficient if you're able to train up a number of experts within and then have them go out and do additional training for your frontline folks. It's really not necessary to train every single individual up to a green belt level, or for that matter, even a lower belt level. A lot of times, many of these Lean tools can be applied with a fairly short training session and orientation, but then having the whole staff participate. I don't know if Colleen can elaborate further in terms of Lean journey on the treatment center side.
We use this similar approach. We did invest in upfront training and have used that as Lennox has said. We really use the train the trainer model in rolling this out and continuing to roll it out, and have been fortunate to have access to quality specialists within Hamilton Health Sciences who have supported us in education sessions. So in terms of freeing up frontline clinical staff, I give kudos to the frontline staff who are picking up the extra work, because in these programs or my programs, that's exactly what's happening. They're really picking up additional clinical load to allow their colleagues time to invest in this, and I think across the programs, everybody has bought into the idea that this is a good thing, and it's going to be good for our patients and our families and for the staff themselves. And so people have really stepped up to the plate and invested well over and above what would be a normal work week and normal expectations in terms of their clinical activities.
I'd say, it'd be fair to say that we're not talking millions of dollars, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is at most sort of in the tens of thousands of dollars if you want an approximation of actual dollars spent. And what happens more is a lot more people are just simply willing to give their time because they can see the benefit. And the more you get the teams involved, the more that happens.
All right. And the last question we have is this project a P3 project or a design bid build owned by the organization project?
It is the latter. It's a design build finance model. We will be maintaining the facility.
All right. Well, that exhausts our list of questions, unless something comes in the next 2 seconds. And would Dr. Huang or Colleen have any final comments you'd like to throw out before we close this off?
No, I think we're just very pleased to be able to share some of our experiences, and of course, very easy to reach us and contact us through our respective websites, through CAPHC, whatever you want. We'd be more than happy to engage in conversations and help out folks who are interested in applying this to their own institutions and taking it further.
I just want to echo what Lennox has said, and also ask that if anybody out there has got any ideas for us, really eager and willing to hear what they are and apply them as we continue to progress through this as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It was a great presentation. So thank you to both of you for the time that you put into this and for bringing all of this expertise to the table here. I think we can tell by the number of questions that it was certainly of value to the audience. Just a reminder to everyone that we do record all these presentations and they are posted on the Knowledge Exchange Network. We'll perhaps maybe get Dr. Huang and Colleen's email addresses, or at least an easier way to contact them, up on the Knowledge Exchange Network as well on the page that's there. So you will be able to watch the full audio visual recording of the presentation, and possibly, if our presenters are willing, if they send me a PDF of their slides, we'll post those as well if possible. For those of you who register an account on the Knowledge Exchange Network, you can comment. So if you do have any suggestions for our presenters, feel free to leave them there, and we'll be able to pass them along. And other than that, we'll thanks to the audience as well for coming. It's always great to have you there. And remember that we do these webinars every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. So check out the CAPHC website to see what the upcoming topics are. So thanks again to everyone, and we'll hopefully see you on our next webinar. Bye.
Thank you.